Greetings to whomever is watching this. Originally, I wanted to simply talk about this myself, but it seems I can't clearly express my thoughts through speech. So I decided to use text-to-speech. This is basically a diary of me having 5 years of experience writing stupid shit. But I think before I can do that, I should probably introduce myself. Hello, my name is Jesse, self-proclaimed idiot Dutch weeb. I am into everything games and anime. I have a troll of a best friend who streams with me on Twitch. There are plenty of things I hate, but the burning passion of 1,000 suns. I like making terrible jokes, especially puns. I often scream at people when they do something real stupid. However, in the end, it is I who is the dumbos. I have zero confidence in myself, my social skills are about as good as you would expect, my luck and memory are the worst, and my energy level is that of a phone running at 10% of its battery. Despite all that, I still attempt to go further as an amateur writer. That is who I am. Now that we have that out of the way, I do think speaking a little of my history that led up to me starting out as a writer. From the beginning, I see myself as I was being a bit weird. I still was able to make lots of friends. I kind of lost that skill now, however, I still noticed that I enjoyed things they didn't and thought of things differently sometimes. One thing I did that definitely seemed to be slightly odd, was making so much shit up. I usually went with the flow and made shit up to get myself out of people's hair, and they believed it too, for some reason. Of course, at the time, my imagination was very limited. Usually, I would just put some shit from other shows or games together and think of something out of that. I remember being like 7 or something. I liked Rayman a lot. I also watched this other Nickelodeon show with the ninja ... robot ... monkeys and stuff. So I made up this stupid story of the Rayman Rangers, where Rayman was just a race of people. It was kind of based off of Rayman 3, where every power-up was its own character. And then of course, there was the OC, who got 2 power-ups. They also used this basic-ass giant robot, each of them controlling a body part. I can't really remember what I imagined them doing, besides going from planet to planet, fighting 3 evil Rayman. I never wrote any of these down at the time, only ran around and pretended I was in those stories. As time went on, I thought of more of these stupid things. Discovering Dragon Ball Z at the time also led me to the side of YouTube that used some of the games as a medium for fanfiction. Obviously, I had my own ideas and tried to make them, but they were never done well. And honestly, they were all too basic in concept. At some point, a Great Depression hit. Everything started to get boring to me. School had not only gotten too easy for me, but I started to notice something. I wasn't actually learning anything anymore. Everything is just a repeat with only one extra added to it. And looking back, that has been the case for years. I first wanted to work on video games, but after studying the matter, I couldn't finish anything. There was a problem, I could not draw or create anything even if my life depended on it. Every visual in my head would just fade away into transparency. I couldn't draw worth a damn either. I was stuck not knowing what to do. Around that time, I just watched YouTube video after YouTube video until that got boring too. At some point, I decided I needed something for motivation, kind of like what Dragon Ball Z gave me in the past. Something I could spend a lot of time on. And then, I watched One Piece. This show, for hundreds of episodes, made me laugh, cry, and root energetically as the main characters overcame any struggle that came their way. I got my best friend into this, which got him into anime. He then recommended No Game No Life to me. And this is what turned me into a fan of the medium. In fact, it ignited a spark into me. It inspired me. I had watched it 6 times in a week. I was addicted to it, and depressed knowing there wasn't a season 2. I decided to read the light novels. And that's where it began. As I was reading it, a thought entered my mind. Out of these words, these people have made a whole animated show out of this. It then hit me. I couldn't draw. I would never be able to get anyone together to make something. However, nothing could stop me from writing the stories, fights, world and characters that I can imagine. As soon as an idea came to mind, I was off to a start. I first had an ending in mind. I thought of how that conclusion could possibly happen. I thought of making the world rather harsh to make this ending happen. But I wanted some idea of a chance, so I made sure there was a way to fight back. After continuously thinking about this, I made my first real attempt of writing something. At age 15, I think, I wrote The Demon World's Light. Yes, I am terrible at titles, but bear with me. At the time, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no experience, nor was I ever really much of a reader. Nonetheless, I tried to make something. And I was proud, no matter the quality. I also uploaded a video a long time ago containing a bonus non-canon joke chapter of the same thing, but it was at a time I had no idea what I was doing. I'm pretty sure I removed it. I hope. I would talk more about it, but it kind of comes back later, and I figured talking about what it is even about wouldn't work right now. After 3 chapters, I started to want to make something else. The Demon World's Light was serious, and I liked to joke around a lot. So, alongside writing that, I wanted to write something more comical. Even before I was even thinking of writing, I had some ideas for a comedy. But didn't know what to do. One day, I walked around in my room back and forth with one of my random thoughts. I would never write a love story, I agreed to myself. I have no feeling for the concept, there is no way I could write that well. So I decided to do it anyway, just to see what would happen. Obviously I knew this would be terrible. It only made sense to me to make this the absurdist fourth-wall-breaking meta-humor comedy novel. One idea I had for the comedy was, a guy who has super strength, but just wants to live a quiet life. But his dumbest friends keep getting into trouble that could end their lives, so he disgruntledly saves them all the time. Another idea was more of a wish rather than an original plan. Because of a certain episode, I kind of wanted to see Gintama, but as a high school anime. Out of a bunch of dumb ideas came the next thing I would write. No One. At first it was a comedy novel that had an actual plot underlining it about a genius girl having to run from her abusive family. She went to this dude for help who was the only person who cared about her. Whilst going to school together, he now had to fight off a bunch of assassins sent by the family in order to keep the girl. It was clear I actively didn't know where I wanted to go with this one in the first 2 chapters. To make matters worse, my C drive decided to be broken. I totally didn't smash the laptop in a fit of rage or anything, why would I do that? And there went the 9 chapters of The Demon World's Light, and the first 2 chapters of No One. For some reason, I didn't even feel angry. I noticed I was improving, and it mostly meant I could rewrite it with my improved writing style. While my laptop needed fixing, I wrote elsewhere. I had an idea of 2 great families duking it out against each other. I figured that instead of writing another book, I should just make that part of the No One lore. Chapter 0 was made, a story of a war that happened 1,000 of years ago. Between the family of Zaxa, the girl's family, and the Van der Hilligland family, the guy's family. With that, I wrote Chapter 3, about the male main character's backstory. Thanks to that, I had a better idea of what to do. Chapters 4 and 5 were the joke chapters that I had fun writing, as everything felt more natural now that I sort of knew what I was doing. I would continue to proofread No One and kind of rewrite parts of the first 2 chapters a numerous amount of times till today. But alongside that, I had yet another idea. I wanted to sell something, but I figured I should maybe first write a shorter story of about 4 volumes. The next title was, The Human Land and the Free Reapers. It was a modern fantasy novel. It had some aspects of real life in it. It all started with the continent of 18 countries that has gone to war with one another countless of times. But then, a great war that included all of them fighting amongst themselves had nearly ruined the continent. After the war, it has been decided that the nations should unite in order to prevent any more war taking place. While most people could accept the different cultures among the nations, and some could just tolerate it, there was one country in particular that felt that all the cultures besides their own was blasphemous to their religion. The people of Distrobia committed many terrorist attacks throughout the continent, with their government seemingly doing nothing about it. As elections were being held for the position of President of the United Lands, terrorism was certainly a hot topic. One man had simply decided to pay some people into committing terrorism so he could have the police capture them to secure votes on the promise that he will end it all. However, he was merely a puppet of a shadowy group of people. Now that he has gained power, this shadowy group have fully overwritten the authority of all nations and gained control over everything. Slowly, country by country, they enacted rules and severe punishments, threatening the families of whoever was already working for the government. Until it was realized that they would create a dystopian where they could beat people on the street over someone saying something mean about the government on the internet, where they can see and hear anything in the cities, and how they wouldn't let anyone go outside of the cities. Before anyone knew this would happen, it was already too late. The government of the United Lands had renamed themselves to the Human Lands. Albeit, not for a new group of people. A boy close to reaching adulthood, Wright, had anticipated this happening. He was abandoned by his parents, but with no one knowing him, he simply used it in his favor and disappeared from society. This allowed him to do as he pleases. He studies as much as possible. His curious and creative mind only saw opportunities with the way the world was going. He gathered a few of his talented friends together and convinced them to fight the government. With the master in data and hacking, an engineer, and a fighter on his team, they went undercover to recruit many people into their organization who were upset or left to rot by the society this government had manifested. They let them disappear and smuggled tools to fight back against the government. With Wright's crazy ideas, they not only create a successful drug that could enhance all aspects of the human organs, they also made new tools that gave them mobility and defense. They even had the tech to create weapons out of thin air. With this, they committed terrorist attacks directly on the government. They announced themselves as the Free Reapers, wearing black cloaks and masks. However, amidst the chaos that has erupted, was another group of individuals. They were a friend group of the teenagers, one of them being a trainee in the Sword Corps of the Human Lands Army. Not did they agree with the Human Land, but they knew the consequences of stepping out of line. They simply wanted to live their own lives. But that has been taken away as the collapsing buildings caused by the Free Reapers killed people around them, and the Human Lands SP. Tours had no problem firing off their guns at civilians if they were in the way had made them slip up and asked something they shouldn't have. While now being considered criminals by the Human Land over a single question, a young-looking girl had led them to a space away from the warring organizations. She was a girl who had lived with a scientist who also suspected the government. Together, they looked for a way to help people rebel. The girl was told to look for young people who seemed worthy to hold the ancient weapon of each nation that have been sealed and forgotten about. Weapons forged by the best possible men with the best possible materials and enchanted with the most excellent witchcraft, of which was thought not to exist. The teens were hesitant, but one for one, they decided to join the girl and gather the weapons. And so, they embark on this quest to gather all of the weapons. According to the girl, they should be able to end the chaos with all of them in hand. But how do they really do that? Destroy the government? Destroy the Free Reapers? Both? Take over the lands for yourselves? Leave it in a state of anarchy? These are the choices these naive teens need to make. I wanted this one to be a bit more complex than what I usually had. Honestly, I'm certain if I reread it now, plenty of things don't really make much sense. And I have managed to confuse myself at one point. Nanomachines, son. They are a thing. Alongside, there was ... another thing I was writing. This time around, it was a fanfiction for fun. Now, I am an Neptunia fan. I have wanted an MMO of sorts where you explore the deep ends of game industry, you create your own character and choose where you live and in what goddess you believe. That was a cool idea, not just mine, I admit. If's voice actress actually had a similar want. I figured, hey, I am a writer, trademark. I can make my own character and story. Though, the original idea kind of had gotten left behind for a new one. This time, I put a bit more thought into how the character should look. I noticed there was no Saturn representation in Neptunia, so I thought that was who the main character should be. But, in this dimension, she was not a goddess. I wanted a human character to go on an adventure first. Saturn was a girl who woke up one day in Virtua Forest. She was awakened by a self-proclaimed spirit who named himself Mercury. She was suspicious at first. She doesn't remember anything. It is a Neptune story after all. Can't have a Neptune plot without amnesia. She thought Mercury was a voice in her head. Apparently, Mercury was from a faraway planet. A dimension-destroying comet had reached his planet's space. He tried to stop it by absorbing its power, but he couldn't control it and ended up destroying most of the planet. He ended up being sealed away before he could do any more damage. That was 1,000 years ago. Someone has broken Mercury's physical seal. It was a double seal. The first one broke into many tiny pieces and had to be recollected to free him. The removal of the first seal opened a doorway for his soul to enter someone's body as a second life. He had chosen Saturn. He let her sleep in this forest until the time was right. He told her that the comet now has reappeared and was on its way to destroy the hyperdimension. To stop it, she will need to find the seal pieces and free Mercury, so that he could stop the comet once more. However, they aren't alone in wanting these seal pieces. Every seal piece seemed to have some kind of energy to them. And an organization known as 13th Universe wants them for themselves. These mysterious enemies not only want the seal pieces, but are even attempting to rewrite game industry into their own ruined dimensions they came from. I actually had a lot of fun writing most of these. The sense of humor kind of matched mine, as I love meta humor, and characters roasting each other. For some reason, most of it felt better than the original things I wrote. Chapter 5 was over 1,000 words long, and I completed it in a week, something I have still never done again. At the time, it was my favorite chapter, and it has my favorite fight this fanfiction. As chapters went on, I wanted Saturn to travel with the 3 other Ox as a party. Chapter 8 ending the party gathering arc. This would end up being my favorite chapter written at the time. It just felt like it was everything I would write. A sad backstory, crazy action with overpowered characters, one or a few taking on an army by themselves, lots of dumb jokes, a bit of corny dialogue, I'm sorry, and helping out another character of their emotional problems. I would write 2 more chapters that went into the Retro Continent arc. And then I had to move on, because I needed money and I thought I really needed to work on selling a book. A few days ago, I went back to Wattpad seeing that some people have read Hyperdimension Saturnia and some have added it to their lists. One of them even left behind plenty of comments. It made me happy to see that, albeit it was a tiny amount, that some people liked it. However, whilst I don't mind telling you to check it out, it was lastly spell-checked in 2018, I didn't even use Word at the time, so there are probably many grammatical errors. To be fair though, I always keep finding them with everything I proofread. Very simple and obvious ones too. But obviously, I wasn't writing any of these chapters consecutively, all the time. I would write a different chapter for a different project. Until I came with yet another idea. So, one day, I had to do some weird shit that would supposedly help me with my mental health. I won't share the details here, because it would take a while to explain. But basically, I had to close my eyes and let my mind envision some random shit and then talk about it. It turned into a story. I jokingly said I could use it for a book. I would later think about it, and actually write a story based on what happened in my mind. I titled it, Immortal Adventure. It was a story contained in a single book instead of many different volumes. I wanted to sell it after I was finished. So I spent the last 3 months of 2017, I believe, writing this stuff. It was a story about one young man named Zumi, who just happened to have the worst luck. In this world, one giant ocean dived countless of islands. It was a fantasy sea adventure where everyone had a potential ability, if they could unlock it. Zumi's ability was restart. Every time he died, or his ship was destroyed, he would return at a certain point in time. However, it seems that the checkpoint never changed. He died constantly, his ship would randomly stop working for no real reason. He would encounter random whirlpools that swallowed him and his ship. He was afraid to enter a new island. When he finds the courage to do so, he ended up getting killed by whatever was on there. Sometimes, he manages to attain god items and food, only to then be killed by a group of pirates. For what felt like 20 years. He had been dying, until he finally stopped caring. He laid down on his ship and didn't care what would happen anymore. Ironically, when he did that, he couldn't be killed anymore. After a while of wandering, he decided to just go traveling for the heck of it, actually daring to ask for help when needed. He ends up finding good friends with their own goals. He ended up going on a treasure hunt with them to reach a certain home for successful adventurers, the Promised Tree. However, it seems that a certain pirate known for eating hearts and being able to walk on water, was following them. The monstrous pirate known as Black Hand. This was something I made that I was kind of proud of. I wouldn't really be able to make a good description without spoiling anything. Most of the description is only for the first third of the book. This book has 3/3, one of which is just a backstory of the main villain. Something I didn't plan. I was only barely able to have it under 110,000 words. It felt unfortunate I had to cut off the backstory of the side villain to do so, but oh well. I kind of liked what I did with the villain this time. I didn't want grand goals like world domination, or destruction, or revenge. Those have its place, but I wanted something different. It might be a little weird, as it is a smaller ambition that no one in their right mind would sacrifice so many morals for, but knowing what the villain went through, I hope some understand. Now, I was thinking of selling it. But I had no idea what I was doing. Obviously, the fact that I am not in an English-speaking country, and this was written in English, didn't help much. I preferred writing in English because I often spend more time doing things that are in the English language. I also think more people understand English, especially versus Dutch. I had no idea what publisher I should try to send the manuscript to. And I didn't really want to self-publish at the time. It would be fine if I found an editor, I thought. Because I know I could proofread it 10 times and still find mistakes, I would never be done. So I did what my parents always told me I should do. Ask for help. Big mistake. I asked them for help because one of them often tells me he knows certain shit, and the other one flaunted their apparent knowing of people. My dad thought he found an editor, though he seems to think editor and translator are the same thing. We never heard of this person again. At the same time, there was someone who might have been able to translate it to Dutch and he knew someone who could get it published. But apparently, he didn't understand any of it, so it was pointless. I ended up waiting for nothing. And I figured I would have probably just have done better if I did these things myself at the end. Unfortunately, when half a year passed by with nothing happening, one may lose motivation. Social anxiety didn't when trying to come into contact with whoever could possibly help me, so I had to think of something else. Perhaps just release some works online in the hopes that people would read it, like it, and then I would be known more. Maybe then I could actually sell things properly? I don't know. First, I tried to make one more original project. I think I simply named it Demon Hunter or something. It was based off of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4. After reading the part, I wanted more of a murder mystery like it. I won't go into much detail. The main character had to go to a strange town on an island near Eastern Europe. The demon hunting organization knew of its stanch happenings. Obviously, it was caused by demons. Only small demons could physically manifest outside of hell, stronger ones had to possess people or synchronize with them. A human who was in sync with the demon was also called a demon ability user. Some are naturally born with demons and had full control over them, allowing them to use one special ability. However, there are also those who were controlled by the demons instead. It was a bit more complicated than that, but that was the gist of it. Only a demon ability user could see the demon of another user. Except for the main character. He didn't have a demon ability. Instead, he carried a blade that was thought to be destroyed a millennia ago. The Demon Slayer. It gives him the power to cancel the effects of a demon ability. It was mostly a test to see if people were interested. But no one read it. So I left in the dust. Honestly, I'm pretty sure most people would find it melodramatic anyway. Maybe a bit too much. Either way, I won't be working on it until people want more, which I don't think will happen anytime soon. So, I had to do something else. I was working on a retelling of Final Fantasy I. It was based off of the commentary I did with my best friend. We filled in the blank slate that the characters were with our own characters. We ended up loving them so much, we wanted to actually see them in a real series. Unfortunately, writer's block prevented me from really being able to write a good fight against their first enemies. After a spiral of depression and hating the place I lived in, the study I did that went nowhere, and also eventually moving out, I didn't have much more time to write. But, of course, no matter what, my spark for writing would always reignite at some point. I went back to the Demon World's Light. Chapters 7, 8, and 9 were not rewritten yet. I figured I too will try selling this book, because it was closer to a simpler fantasy book. It would be much easier finding a publisher, I thought. So, I started to write chapter 7. Wow. My writing style had changed. Everything is so much longer now. I had to split the chapter up in 3 parts. That were all longer than the original chapter. Unfortunately, I thought I couldn't fit it in one volume. I read the limit was 100,000, and together with chapter 7, it would have been about 138,000 words long. Since we're back here, I can finally give you a description of this book. It's a story where 100 years ago, the world shattered into a completely new one. No one from the old world was alive in this new one, and it seemed certain creatures were just born from this event alone. Within these 90 years, humanity have quickly regained much of their technology and wisdom. Well, there were many who also were no different than cavemen. Unfortunately, after 90 years of this new world, the creatures evolved into powerful monsters. They suddenly turned violent and were out to kill any human they could find. As if someone commanded them. For 2 years, villages were torn down as humans had to escape from these tremendous beasts. Not all was doom and gloom, however, for when the world changed, a certain energy came into existence as well. An energy that flowed around the world. People absorb these with anything they do. Some have decided to train with this energy and have reached a status of superhumans. An all-out war against monsters had driven some of the beasts away, allowing for towns to be made unpreserved. Later, these superhumans would be known as checkers. With magical checklists, they accepted quests from people and hunt down deadly monsters for a reward. In the 100th year, a 7-year-old checker by the name of Savy went on a grand adventure to do something no one ever succeeded to do before. Explore the whole world. Whoever tried doing that died a horrible death. But this child had nothing to lose. As for why I wanted a child as protagonist, I simply liked the irony of a kid being able to take down a 20 feet tall monster. Savy had a dislike of people and was pretty negative most of the time, but he did find certain things fun to do. Throughout his journey, he meets many enemies, both monsters and humans. But he would also start getting friends that join him on his journey. When I read this one again after so long, I kind of felt a theme going on. Every character that joined Savy was bored with their lives. In the case of 2 of them, they have already fulfilled their ambitions way too early and had no direction of where to go right now. The other one never had an ambition to begin with and simply waited to get killed by a monster in a quest. But then, this kid comes up and does something crazy. He announces his ambition and shows his determination to reach his goal. The characters join him, because they finally see a goal where they can leave their boring lives behind and work together on a goal that could change anyone's life. With this story, I found a publisher that seemed pretty good. They claimed to want to help upcoming writers and said they would give tips if your manuscript didn't make the cut. So, I felt safe in sending it to them. Now, it was rejected. I am not angry about that, at all. Obviously, they decided it was not up to their standards, and that's understandable. However, I expected them to at least tell me what I needed to improve on. And instead of doing that, they just gave me a list of what could possibly have gone wrong. What use is that? As someone with no self-confidence, as far as I was concerned, I did everything wrong. In reality, there was no way of knowing what I did wrong. But even still, that's not the biggest issue. I really needed to know what I did right. If I go with the assumption that I did everything wrong, I may try to fix what isn't broken, causing it all to be worse. And if I knew what I specifically did wrong, perhaps I could have either put more focus into improving that aspect, or just not do things I'm clearly not good at. But now, it felt like I was back at step 1 again. I certainly was depressed for a few months. Then I figured to go back to my plan of releasing shit on the internet. And of course I had a new idea. It is another Neptunia fanfiction. I called it, Third Sister. I won't go into much detail, as there will be a follow-up video about this one. But I tried something new with this one. I wanted a slightly serious, but cute, story for Neptunia. This time, in the first-person perspective. I tend to prefer writing in the third-person perspective, but I felt first-person was better for this one. The story would go many ways, with 2 sequels that had a different tone than this one. I wrote 4.5 chapters of it. I wanted to release one big volume at once. It will be up on Wattpad whenever I get the time to proofread it. With the introduction out of the way, we have finally reached the most important part of the video. I do really need money now. The sort of job I worked at made me realize that working is just not my thing. It's fine at first, but it gets repetitive, tedious, and I get the feeling I need to move on quite quickly. I didn't even get much money from it, as it counted as voluntary work. But I notice how much time you lose doing it. Yeah, you get money, but what's the point if you have the time to spend what you can do with said money? When working on proofreading again, I realized that creative works are just where I was at home. The motivation was back. And I proofread, No One. It's a silly book with a serious story underlining it about 2 weirdos fighting off a rich family that send assassins to them. Also, what I consider my worst book I worked on. And god damn it, I will sell it with pride. I finally decided to self-publish it. If it's shit, no biggie, it was just the worst one I made, and the other ones will seem like masterpieces compared to it. Was it actually good? Then I needn't worry if the other books were good. It is my final strategy. But, I am stuck. Obviously, I can't market worth a damn. But what really sucked, was trying to find an illustrator. No one mostly parodied anime, and thus, I wanted an anime-styled cover. But I just don't know who I could pay to draw it for me. So, if anyone can, I want to ask, please, help me find one. With that said, let me end this video, with the full description that I had planned to use for Kindle. Of this book. That we know as, No One. 1,000 years ago, the great gods from Earth have failed to protect the fourth wall from shattering. Thanks to that, one fantasy world had begun to turn into the real one. Its history changed as the world went on, with the characters becoming self-aware of being within a book. Within that world, a war between 2 great families waged. The Van der Hilligland family, a family embracing freedom and individuality, and the Zaxa family, a family that values a hierarchy, where the head of the family controls everything. A friendship between 2 young boys bloomed. but the differences of their families ruined their friendship, igniting a 500-year war. A grand battle between humans with superhuman capabilities, and a royal family that had technology and armies on their side. At the end, Zax's army had dwindled to nothing, only leaving a few assassins in their hands. And the Van der Hillegland family was brought to near extinction. The two had agreed to a ceasefire. The Van der Hillegland family had decided to hide in the masses and lived mostly normal lives. The Zaxa family, however, only planned to take over the world in a different way. Excluding the Van der Hilleglanders, they would kill everyone who knew them, destroyed any document or evidence of their history and that they had existed. Also that some family members could get into positions of power and future politics with no known name. Only so that they could get influence, fighters, servants, anything. Their plan was to control the world from the shadows. Now, 2015, in the Netherlands. Young man, Jang van der Hillegland is at his last year in high school, where he shall meet a young genius girl with silver hair, Lei Zaxa, a girl disliked by everyone. The two, however, notice that they are both weird. They have similar hobbies and playing games, watching anime, reading manga, and other nerd hobbies. Knowing that Jang was the only person to care about her, Lei had decided to run to him, attempting to escape her abusive family. But the family will not just let the head's daughter run away like that. She was despised, but her genius was unrivaled. They will do everything to kill Jang and take her back. This is a comedy, BTW. Though, I can't guarantee you will laugh for the reasons I intended to make you laugh. I hope the ridiculous situation Jang and Lei find themselves in, the absurd characters, and the jokes made at them, any things I know and like, may make you chuckle. And that's it. Two weirdos get into a bunch of strange happenings, whilst also having a story with serious and dark undertones, having fictional areas in a real-world setting, fighting for their lives, or playing a game that could alter their destiny. All of the crazy things that can happen will happen, and these two are going to have to deal with it whilst complaining at their writer. That is what no one is all about. And that was it. But let's be honest here. If this is supposed to be a parody of anime, shouldn't it be in Japanese? Don't worry, I don't need to know Japanese, that's where Mr. G is for. Take it away, Google Translate.
1000年前、地球からの偉大な神々は、第4の壁を粉砕から保護することに失敗しました。そのおかげで、ファンタジーの世界が、現実のものに変わり始めていました。世界が進むにつれて歴史が変わった。キャラクターが、本の中にいることを自覚する。その世界の中で、二人の偉大な家族間の戦争が繰り広げられました。自由と個性を受け入れる家族である、ファンデルハイリグランデン家族と、家族の長がすべてを管理する階層を重視する、家族である、ザカイサ家族。二人の少年の間の友情が咲きました。しかし、家族の違いは彼らの友情を破壊し、500年戦争を引き起こした。超人的な能力を持つ人間と技術と軍隊を味方にした王室との壮大な戦い。最後にザカイサの軍隊は数人の暗殺者を手にしただけで何もできなくなりました。そしてファンデルハイリグランデ家はほぼ絶滅しました。二人は停戦に同意した。ファンデルハイリグランデ家は大衆の中に隠れることを決め、ほとんど普通の生活を送っていました。しかし、ザカイサ一家は世界を別の方法で引き継ぐことだけを計画していました。ファンデルハイリグランダーを除く彼らは彼らを知っていた人を殺し、彼らの歴史と彼らが存在していたことの文書や証拠を破壊しました。これは一部の家族が知名度なしで権力と将来の政治の地位につくことができるようにするためです。彼らが影響力、戦闘機、使用人、何でも得ることができるようにだけ。彼らの計画は影から世界を制御することでした。今、2015年、オランダで、若い男、ジャン・ファンデル・ヘイリー・グランデンは、高校の最後の年に、銀髪の若い天才少女、レイ・ザカイサに会います。ただし、この二つはどちらも奇妙であることに注意してください。彼らはゲームをすること、アニメを見ること、 漫画を読むこと、及び他のオタク趣味において、同様の趣味を持っています。ジャンは彼女を気にする唯一の人物であると知って、レイは虐待的な家族から逃げようとして彼に走ることに決めました。しかし、家族は頭の娘をそのように逃がすだけではありません。彼女はSP されましたが、彼女の天才は無敵でした。彼らはジャンを殺して彼女を取り戻すためにあらゆることをするでしょう。これはコメディです。ところで、しかし私があなたを笑わせるつもりだった理由で、あなたが笑うことを保証することはできません。ジャンとレイがとんでもない状況、不条理なキャラクター、私が知っていて好きな多くのことでなされたジョークがあなたを笑わせるかもしれないことを願っています。それだけです。二人の変人が奇妙な出来事に巻き込まれますが、真剣で暗い暗黒の物語を持ち、現実世界の設定で架空の領域を持ち、彼らの人生のために戦い、運命を変える可能性のあるゲームをプレイします発生する可能性のあるクレイジーな事柄が発生しますが、これら二つはライターに文句を言っている間に対処する必要があります。
Thank you, Google Translate, for butchering every language you touch. Whoever made it through the video, I can't thank you enough for listening. I hope some other people like me that wanted to write some stupid shit will listen to this and know that they're not alone in dealing with stuff, especially if you have a low self-esteem like me. Or not. Maybe it is me who is alone and you all are looking at me with the face of, wow, this fucker is dumb. Didn't think about that. Well, anyway. I also made this video in the hope that someone will know about me. And maybe also that I could get some help finding someone who could draw a cover for me. I'll pay, of course. And that shall be the end. If anyone has any questions, I would like to hear it. Maybe make a follow-up video. You can always ask me questions when I'm streaming. Thank you for watching. And have a nice day. I didn't bother proofreading this, just so you know.